All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. Going to do a theological discussion today with my street epistemology friends, Reid and Nathan. We got there. And who, like me, are also atheists, which is relevant for this conversation because we got Shane Kennedy and Justin here again, who we did theological discussions recently about basically whether the Protestant Reformation was good or bad overall. And so we're going to have a discussion about whether aborted fetuses have souls and go to heaven, and talk about this basically from both atheist and Christian perspectives. And it was I was inspired to talk with you guys about this just to see our different opinions, and because of that conversation that you had, Reid, that street epistemology discussion you had with a Christian who said that he does believe that aborted fetuses have souls and they go to heaven. So yeah, you got the clip lined up there, and you can play that clip there, and then we can comment on it.
Yeah, just for the context and the original claim. Here we go.
Yeah.
50-50? I don't have the right answer. It's just my opinion. It's just your opinion. Why do you feel this way?
Okay, because I believe in God. Actually, the reason why I chose this one, because abortion, they say, is murder, but I heard that every child that you abort is waiting in heaven for you. So actually, once you get to heaven, all those children that these women,
It's interesting how, there you go, doing meta StreamYard commentary here.
Yeah, it's really meta. I was like, we better mention that.
There you go.
Because there I am with hair that's like a foot long. And it was like earlier this summer. But yeah, we're watching Reid have a discussion with somebody in the park. And then Reid and I get together like once in a while, every Sunday, to talk about some of the interviews that we do. And so we're actually watching ourselves have a conversation at the moment, just to kind of fill you guys in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Inception level.
Okay.
All right.
So where do you want to go with this?
I guess first of all, Shane and Justin, I want to get your opinions about this, because I know that you're against abortion, Shane, but I don't know your opinion, Justin. And if you guys could each just like elaborate on your opinions about that, I think that would be a good place to start. Whichever one of you wants to go first.
I picked the Make America Great Again hat. I'm singling you out since no one said anything.
Well, I would put forward that I'm fairly pro living things continue to live, especially if the living thing in question is a human being. That said, in terms of the abortion, the neatest solution that I've found would be the idea that each side concedes part of it. So what it would be is, given if assumption is made that abortions will continue whether it's legal or not, then that would enable it not to be illegal. But then I would put forward on the flip side, the concession from the pro-choice camp would be that Christians or pro-lifers would be free to try to encourage minimization by any means possible. So you wouldn't find that double standard, so to speak, where it would seem an act of intimidation to try to encourage adoption, or encourage other solutions, or find people who are in those situations. So you could kind of, in theory, minimize it through whatever loving, supportive means that a pro-life person could come up with, while still not leaving women feeling like their only option is to go to an alley, let's say, in the crudest terms. Beyond that, I'm kind of curious whether how the issue of whether they have a soul or not is relevant per se. So I'd be kind of curious to see what kind of impact that actually has on the discussion. I don't know where he was exactly. What's the consolation there exactly? So I'm not sure. So.
Well, you correct me if I'm wrong here, Reid, but I think the idea is that he's for abortion because he believes that like even aborted fetuses have souls and souls go to heaven. But that's at least against like the stereotypical notion of Christians being against abortion or being pro-life.
Yeah, and just to be fair to him, I forgot his name. When he sat down, he says he doesn't really have a strong opinion. He had like a 50-50 at the beginning for his confidence about is abortion murder. So I don't know if he's just coming up with reasons or rationalizations on the spot. So I don't know how deep he is into the theology and relations of souls in Christianity. So I don't know what he would say. I don't know if we surveyed top apologists from each sect of Christianity, what would they answer for this question, and what would the reasons be for their answers? I can hypothesize. I haven't really looked into this question too much anyway.
Okay. So before we go on to you, Justin, I'm just curious, Shane, why do you think whether aborted fetuses have souls or not is irrelevant?
It's not so much that I think it's irrelevant, but I mean, like, if one looks at it as murder, it's like, yeah, by definition, any dead individual with a soul, if you believe in souls, has an opportunity to go to heaven. That doesn't necessarily, I mean, yes, from a certain perspective, that eases the blow of their passing, but I don't see how it affects the level of wrongness of killing someone just because, from a Christian perspective, you still have a chance to enter into eternal life. So I just, I don't know. I just kind of, I guess implicitly it's kind of obvious. Yeah, okay, maybe they are dead, but it still seems, I don't really see how it fundamentally changes what's going on. Maybe it's slightly less of a trespass against the fetus, because in theory they're going to have a heavenly existence.
So I guess where your view is different is it's different from what I assumed, in that I guess some Christians would be against this guy's position if he for the sake of argument is firmly for it, because they might think that abortion is wrong because aborted fetuses don't have souls and don't go to heaven. But you're sort of saying it's just wrong to do that whether they have souls or not.
I mean, if one draws the conclusion it is murder, then I think murder's de facto wrong. Maybe perhaps some Christians believe that there's like an earning your way into heaven, or you have to go through confirmation or accepting Jesus Christ as your savior before you get a chance to go to heaven. So maybe that's the difference there, is like, as opposed to other Christians who think you've completely robbed them of everything. No, they still actually have souls. So all of Christ's gifts are still open to them. So that part hasn't been taken away, as opposed to potentially what another Christian might say. Because I guess, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's heard some idea that you have to go through a certain process before God is going to open up heaven to you. I think some Christians do have that understanding. So
okay, so to the second part of the question, then, would you say that regardless of whether aborted fetuses have souls or not, they do not go to heaven?
I mean, I don't think we know whether someone goes to heaven. I think that's left in God's hands, I think is the best way to look at it. But I mean, I don't see any reason why God would necessarily deny any living being an opportunity to go to heaven, regardless of what's happened in their life. We don't necessarily know on what conditions precisely that's determined by. So
Okay. Okay. So Justin, what is your opinion about this question?
Well, it makes your mind spin. I'll say I just briefly looked up kind of definition of abort, not necessarily as it relates to pregnancy. I feel like in the word, it's clear that it's a premature intervention. And so in that sense, it's a human intervention into a process, really, I'd say we know nothing about. And we know as much science as we know, but I feel like still at bottom, the conception, that moment, I don't think they can really explain it. I mean, they have models to explain it. So on its face, it's a human intervention into something really... See, I happen to think there's no other life in the universe, right? So a life on planet Earth is a really precious thing. And it's a human intervention in something that we had nothing... maybe we fornicated and led to the pregnancy, but really we play no role in the development of the fetus. And I think where this gets really interesting today, more interesting than maybe 20 years ago, is that the fetuses, it's acknowledged that they are extremely precious, say materially, for stem cell research, et cetera, et cetera. There is a very high value on them. So what's evil about it is, to me, although maybe I'm getting off track, because the question you're leading to is whether aborted fetuses go to heaven.
Well, that's it. Like whether you agree with abortion or not is certainly an important aspect of it too, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll finish my thought. I think where the abortion gets more complicated today is all the kind of biological technologies that are being based, the industry that's being based on the supply of fetuses. So to me, that's where it really gets wicked. We're not just, it's not an intervention to save some poor woman or a poor man, or something, to save a child from a life of poverty or something. It's sort of an intervention of, it's a kind of robbery from God, in a way, because it's humans intervening in the life and taking the life essence, you could say. Okay, and using it for your own purposes, commercializing it. So to me, that's where it leads into such like a wicked, evil issue.
So like stem cell research in particular is where it leads that way for you.
Briefly, yes. I mean, it leads into so many other things, and it's still like developing. People use it's pretty... You guys think I'm making this up, or have you kind of heard some of this stuff, like the kind of stuff they use with baby cells and their blood and their skin? There's really a whole industry on it.
Okay. Well, I have more questions for both of you guys, but before that, Reid and Nathan, what do you guys have any questions, or what would you like to say about Shane and Justin's opinions?
What do you think, Nathan? Go ahead.
Well, I've got like a couple of lingering questions in mind. I don't know how on topic they are just yet. I'm wondering, like, is medicine intervention or robbing God of like souls? If somebody is like on their deathbed, but we use stem cells to save their life, would that be prolonging the inevitable in a bad way?
Good question.
I don't know how on topic that is, but I'm just wondering if that is part of the equation as well.
I think that's relevant to what Justin was saying. Yeah. So what do you think about that, Justin?
I mean, medicine, in the proper sense, may be good for the body. I mean, I don't think there's anything anti-Christian in medicine, in healing people. I like the body heal itself. I think body. So I'm not totally. I don't want to ramble on, but just the sort of example you gave of a fetus cell being used to help save some older person. I think there is something a little wicked in that, and that is what's motivating the industry. People who want to live past 70, 80, 90. I think their ability to live longer artificially is definitely tied into the abortion industry. So,
Okay.
This gets controversial. Like, so if you're a Christian, are you going to resist the cancer treatment? And that's
Right.
I don't have a clear answer on that.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask you something about that. Like, if you take stem cells out of the equation, like if you use some other sort of medicine that doesn't require any sort of harm or any sort of stem cells or anything like that from it, if you use medicine to save someone's life, is that still also like interfering with what should be up to God?
I think there's an essential difference between the intervention and the abortion, which is definitely cutting off the life. There's a difference with measures that are taken to prolong life. Like, I think one is men are going to try and, I just think they're kind of different. And I don't think, basically, short answer, I'll just own it. No, I don't think you can end a life to justify prolonging another one. So, I mean,
Okay.
But we can artificially go stem cell.
Is it okay to just in general, is it okay to use medicine to save someone's life if they're gonna die? Like, let's say someone gets shot and they come into the hospital and they're going to die unless they get their wounds healed and they get medicine. Is it?
Yeah, all good. It's all good.
Okay. Why is that?
Sounds like it's all good unless it's stem cells or at the expense of some other life.
It's all good.
What I'm hearing you say?
It's all good until an innocent lifeblood is spilled. That's what I would say.
See.
I mean, I think that's a clear, at least a clear statement.
Okay. So would you say that it's more okay to use medicine to save someone's life because that doesn't rely on using someone's lifeblood for it, as you put it?
Yeah.
Okay.
How can you use one life as a price for another? That's all I'm saying. But medicine. I don't want to start a battle against all of medicine.
Okay. No, this is a good place to go. So Shane, what do you think about this question and about Nathan's original question?
Well, for the purposes of clarity, I'll just try to outline some like presuppositions or assumptions built into the Christian perspective as I see it. So the first one is, I think it's fair to say that Christianity is less, let's say less standardized than ever, which is an issue as I've explored my growth in Christ, I've noticed this to be a significant issue is how divided the church is, which kind of dilutes the message. So there's that issue one. So obviously I'm not speaking carte blanche for every Christianity, but I think, and I'm going to try to use secular language to describe some of the basic premises of Christianity. First off, like from a game theory perspective, they want to reorient the calculus of reality such that every single life has equal value. There's a historical, you could look at this historicity of this claim, but I do believe it to be the case. It's a radical departure from how previous societies looked at the value of human life. So off the bat, you have this, at the time, radical claim, all life has value. And then secondly, one of the main because we're all supposed to exemplify Christ in our life. What are we supposed to do to emulate? In what way, not emulate, but what are we supposed to act out from him? It's the idea of self-sacrificialness. So a vampiric desire to suck another life for your own benefit, pretty much the absolute opposite, right? And the definition of love, when you think of God is love in a Christian sense, is the self-sacrificial, self-denying form of love. One example of this is in some King James versions, the word love was more often charity. Charity does not boast, charity does not envy, in the sense that it was trying to draw. It's not the love of excitement or passion; it's the love of self-denial. So, if when you look at, so it's not so much whether you're robbing something from God or not by intervening in His plan. I think by definition you can't alter God's plan. It's just, what are you serving? So are you serving your own desires? Are you serving the desires of a demonic spirit? Are you serving envy, or are you serving God? God being love, God being self-sacrifice. So this is kind of the rubric by which you would look at your decision. And this is often the biggest problem I have with a lot of abortion talk. Is it's like, so this life that's not going to continue, for what exact thing is it going to be denied? Is it a year of challenges? Is it a blow to your reputation? Is it the physical risks of a pregnancy? Exactly what are you trading in terms of inconvenience or convenience to have what I don't really see you could define elsewise other than a life going away? So all in all, I would put forward that it's not so much that medicine's good or bad. It comes down to whether you're embodying that kind of self-sacrificial love in your actions. And if you're serving that, then you're probably pretty much good to go.
Okay. So from that perspective, then, would you say that if we go with the most extreme example and the mother will die if she has the child, and you have to choose between the life of the mother and the life of the child, would you say that you should choose the life of the child because the mother should still have that that idea of self-sacrifice, like one of the ways that you define God there?
Well, I think that's where things get really interesting. And I think that's where we want to live in a world where those are intensely personal decisions. Those are intensely contextualized decisions. I don't think it's our place to start dictating really defined terms for how people are going to handle those situations. Recently I've encountered a couple people who have got divorced, and I can't help but think, am I still here? Okay. I can't help but think, if those people in each instance hadn't been in such a bubble, if they had community, friends, in my case, I would recommend a priest, and really had some people around them in addition to, from a Christian perspective, the Holy Spirit to guide them, they might have ended up achieving a better situation. So I think, more rather than getting dogmatic about what shouldn't or shouldn't be done in that situation, it's like, are you setting yourself up in a situation where, whether you're a secular person and you believe it's a calculus of rational thought that's going to derive the best outcome, or a Christian who wants to be prepared to hear what God is trying to instruct them to do? I think the emphasis should be more on situating yourself in a proper situation, so that the best outcome occurs, as opposed to getting incredibly dogmatic. I'm not very big on the dogmatic approach. I don't think it's what's called for. So
Looks like Andrew dropped out. That's why we're hosting it on my StreamYard account, just to make sure everything works out. Is this the question we're focusing on right now? Is it ethical to use medicine based on stem cells, which requires abortion? Is that the question we're talking about, or something more specific?
I would say the epistemologist should be the topic setter. So I think
I want to work that question too much.
Sorry. Here's Andrew back.
There we go.
Andrew, is this the question we're talking about, or something different, more specific?
Yeah, I would say that's what we're talking about now.
Okay, and we finished this question: should Christians support abortion if aborted fetuses go to heaven? Is that the question we were talking about?
Yeah, that's the original one.
Yeah. And did we ever settle this question? Do aborted fetuses go to heaven?
I think. Well, it seems like just to put it simply, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the most simple answer to that question for both of you guys would be no. Is that right?
Want to do like a thumbs up, thumbs down, and doesn't apply to us, but thumbs up for you guys?
I would assume so.
What thumbs up? Did we address this? Or what's the question?
Would
We're
you say,
asking you right now, do you think that aborted fetuses go to heaven?
or 0 to 100 if you want to as well, if it's not
Sure.
binary, your confidence. If 100 is absolutely yes, they do, or 0 is absolutely no, they don't, or 50, not sure. What is your confidence about it? Damn, Andrew.
He'll be dropping on the ground.
Anyone have
My problem with
any-
answering this is that it's not necessarily that they travel to heaven. I guess the question is, are aborted fetuses in the presence of God? The
Sure.
question
Or
ends
do
obviously yes,
fetuses have souls? Maybe is a good place to start.
and
Yeah, that's another
souls
basic
of
question.
God.
We're shuffling around.
Yeah.
But do you guys think?
I think the Bible teaches that they do because they have a personhood, they have a personal identity there. That this aborted fetus has a name, even if it doesn't have a human name, it has a name, like a personal identity
Mhm.
in front of God. Maybe not for us. If it had come into the world, it would have come in, and I don't know. It would have maybe manifested more.
Yeah, here's a question. Does a blastocyst have a soul? Like from the moment of conception, whatever that is, does that thing have a soul?
Yeah, why not? It's not the body that carries the soul. You know, it's not material. So blastocyst, I don't know what that is.
I never heard that term. That's
The sperm and
Like
the
the
egg
cluster
coming
cells.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one cell from right there at conception. Does that thing?
It's the stage before zygote.
flight, right?
before what? Sorry.
Before the zygote. So these are like stages of like
I don't know, it's like-
fetal development.
Okay. So is the soul something
Let me go
metaphysical
with
that
yes. I say yes.
that we can't?
Because by
okay,
continuity,
is-
I have to say yes. I can't
Yes
just
for
say at
this.
some point, like 1 month into it, it's going to have a soul. I got to say it has
Okay.
a soul from its beginning.
Okay,
So-
so
That's what
we
Does
can
the
move on.
does the soul is the soul metaphysical? Like we can't experience it?
Do we want to talk about that question, or stick to abortion, or does it matter?
See,
Whichever
what's not good
you guys-
about these questions, I'll just say, sorry, is
Go
that
ahead.
you guys don't have to answer. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
feel
doesn't
like your
apply to
answers
us.
are obviously no, because maybe you just reject the terms.
Yeah.
How would you answer these questions in like a positive way? Where do you kind of have to
Yeah.
agree with the questions or not?
Well, I
I
mean,
would-
we can turn this around on them very easily. I mean, it's like
Yeah, let's flip it.
so. I mean, so under what circumstances is it okay to murder people for what amount of benefit? You know, like
Well, see,
like, there's a
you're-
trolley. It's coming down a track. John standing on the track.
Oh,
you
the
know,
trolley
like-
problem.
you know, I mean, how do you? I mean, this is the issue I find very interesting with non, let's say, less formal belief systems. It's like, is you ad hoc each of these situations to decide what's wrong? Is it, or you're going to go more Kantian on it? There's an imperative here where you're not allowed to murder for your own benefit, or how do you guys frame the justifications that can lead you to be allowed to kill someone?
Well,
Is this the question?
Yeah,
Andrew,
so
what's
I would like to focus the question on souls, probably
So
foremost, before we go into the ethics of what to do in a certain scenario with souls. I want to know our confidence on souls in general, and yeah, do all humans have souls? And then, if so, when does that start?
Well, I would put forward that like the Christian definition of soul is any living human from conception has a
From the
soul.
moment of conception. Okay.
I would say
So-
that's probably the thing, and I would say that the secular definition of soul would be to whatever extent you believe there's anything sacred about a living human. Would be the secular equivalent of a soul would be the belief that there is some intrinsic thing you should not trespass against that exists inside a living human.
How come? How come life doesn't start before?
If I could
conception?
elaborate, maybe like the biblical soul would be like in Genesis. It says, "The Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So I think Christian, the soul is like breath of God, the living breath, spirit of God. Which I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if the secular atheist world has a better kind of definition which doesn't refer to God. I think the Christian definition of soul always has to relate it to something that originates with God. His breath. Basically his breath.
Well,
Shane, do you think that's fair? Soul, breath of
I
God?
think
What do you think?
I think you're touching upon the animation of reality that God enables through his energies. I think this is tied into a soul. So I don't quite have the vocabulary to really explain it properly, but I think you're onto something with this idea of the connection between God's breath, God's spirit animating things, and that being intimately linked to a soul.
okay. Well, to address what you said, Justin. I mean, I personally,
Like for you guys, Nathan, Reid, soul, well, how would you kind of, where do you come from on that?
Yeah, so I like to start with why do we think there are souls, and from so I like to personally stick to questions as to why you guys think that there are souls to begin with, and then maybe we can go from there.
yeah,
I don't know what a soul is, so I can't
Yeah.
say if we have it, and I don't know how to test that claim. I don't know what I could discover in reality that would shift my confidence one way or the other. If it's just a by definition thing, then I don't know what that means. This seems like an empirical claim. It seems like
Right. Exactly. It's
Or-
not really morality. It's more like it is the case or isn't the case, right?
or maybe it's not an empirical claim.
Mm.
Then why should I care about the claim? Is it? I don't know what to think about it.
So are you guys like strict materialists in that sense? So like if it to be real, it has to be empirically verifiable. This is the sole source of truth.
More like if it isn't real, and I'm believing that it is, I personally wouldn't know how to get unstuck believing in that false thing if it's false. So if it isn't the case, and I think that it is the case, what could I do to question it?
I might
So
offer
what?
the
How do
example-
you?
I would say ideas are real and they are not material. So not everything is material. So, but I don't know what the category of soul goes in under. Is it just an idea? Is it just something in our imagination? Or is it some phenomenon in reality that is actually a thing that we can use future testable predictions to distinguish between our imagination and this thing?
yeah.
What does this thing predict in reality?
Mm-hmm.
That our consciousness survives our death? Anything else it predicts? Could it predict anything on Earth? could we predict someone who's in like a unconscious state in the hospital, like having a near-death experience, and they can report back to us a set of 10-digit numbers from a random number generator? Potentially, what if this is true? How could we test it? What hypothetically could happen in reality that could shift our confidence one way or other? What could raise our confidence or lower it? These are things I think about.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. We should go visit an autopsy. What do you call it? A morgue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We got a body on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's my body. Maybe it's your body.
Can you bring the mic a little closer to your mouth?
I'm so sorry.
That's all good. I can hear you just a little faint.
Is it the thing on your
I think
Yeah,
this
there it is.
your headphone
sound
wire?
better.
Yeah, that's a little better.
Much better.
Yeah.
I feel like biologically you can't really tell what a dead body is, the difference between a dead body and a living body. Like in the Bible, when somebody dies, it always says the soul departed, or the soul or the spirit has flown. And for me, I feel like I'm sure we can agree that there's something that separates a living body from a dead body. And we could say, well,
There are
a dead
certain
body
things-
doesn't have a heartbeat, or a dead body doesn't have a pulse. I feel like all those things aren't enough because you could somehow still restore those things, and the person will not be alive. So, I would try to persuade you that sort of material evidence for the existence of souls is. I don't think we really know how to bring someone back from the dead. That kind of thing. Even if you have a body that's totally in otherwise healthy shape, you cannot reanimate it. That'd be my effort. That's how I would try to persuade you. Material. So, what do you think?
Are you saying that like if we could resurrect a body, that would mean that would be the way to prove that souls do not exist?
Yes, I'm basically kind of saying that. Yes.
Okay.
I'm just trying to persuade. I don't think there's a scientific definition of a dead person. There's just like
There is though.
help me understand. What is it?
You do run into all those problems, like, okay, someone's defined as dead by one metric, but then that gets restored. So they were, being very explicated with some of these areas kind of becomes hard to do, right? Are you guys familiar with this issue? If you use brain activity, then they were dead, but then they're back to life again because the brain activity gets restored. I think there's edge cases and all these things where the definition kind of becomes a little bit harder to explain. No, explicate.
If we don't have access to information about when someone or how to measure whether or not someone is dead, kind of like in what's that movie, Princess Bride, mostly dead or dead. Yeah. But if there's a lack of information, does the lack of information, can that be used as evidence to make a claim about souls?
Well, a big part of Christianity is about mysteries and what you can or can't know, right? And so earlier when you guys were talking about make a claim, one person was talking about predictive value of things. It's like this seems to be, so this is where I often get to with non-Christians is it's like, can you know something that you can't explicate? Tacit knowledge would be an example. What can you know something with can you know something in your heart or intuitively, even if you can't articulate it, or is that some sort of lesser form of knowing, right? So is there this is the boundary of knowing what you can reduce to statements, because one example, again, I maybe this is murky as as mud. But like, I feel like there's a certain type of knowing where people could sense that perhaps there's unease in a room. Okay, maybe they can't articulate exactly why they know that, and maybe somebody could try to delineate all these subtle cues they're picking up on as to why they would state that. But it's like it gets interesting when you whether even if you acknowledge ideas aren't material, are you still trying to like claim there's only propositional knowledge essentially?
Well,
You
if you can't explain why you know something, then how is that knowledge?
Well, because for instance, an animal can't explain how it knows anything, but I mean, it obviously knows how to feed itself. It can't tell you that it knows how to feed itself.
But you're not an animal, though.
You can't write it down. Pardon?
But you're not an animal, though. I'm asking, like, you. How could you, like, why does not being able to explain why you know something for you mean that you still know it?
Because I how do I say this properly? Just from like a humility perspective, it's very hard to understand the black box that is yourself. It's very hard to understand the black box that is your decision-making process. You often don't have time to reflect on your decisions, right? To the extent you might want to. You don't often have time to sit down and do this mathematical equation to justify what you're doing, but you still act, right? You still have premonitions, and one person might come forward and say, okay, well, I know this because I not only can use past examples in reality that I've observed, and that those past examples predict what's going to happen in the future, and that maps onto what I'm doing now. Ergo, I know I'm making a right decision. And then that's the standard because I got predictive, I got past examples, I got the evidence, I can count things involved. That's real knowing. And then on the other hand, it's like somebody could just know the thing is going to work out if they respond that way or try this thing or move their body this way, and it does. Okay, but at no point were they able to explicate it or explain it. And I see why the one that has more data points does seem to have more value, but there's a lot of things that people know and act as if it's true, and I think that's easier to downplay because it's less explicated. And I think this is one of the main divides between people who are Christians who believe in revealed truth, who believe that you can know something in your heart, you can perceive something in your heart, perceive things in a way that's not as intellectualized. That there's other ways to come by truth than just what might line up with the kind of like empiricist Renaissance man's definition of what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So Justin wrote in the column here,
Andrew, would
the positive.
What
Go
was
ahead.
that?
Sorry, there's a little
I was
delay.
just
Go
gonna-
ahead.
Sorry, Reid.
Go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to throw in that you kind of asked Shane, how can you have knowledge if you can't something?
Yeah.
Shane was kind of referring to Christian history. You know, we try not to be total know-it-alls about everything. There is a boundary we try not to speculate on. But I was just going to say, I've been reviewing like the Latin circumstances, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. You know, all the things that help you know, like what is the case, the fact. So I feel like maybe with the Christian, we have a lot of maybe the what, the where, the when, the why, maybe the how, even less. You know, so I think we have some limited knowledge of what the circumstances are, the circumstances of like human existence. But I think we don't always know the how. That's like, that's how does God perform? Like, how does, I don't know. That's what I was thinking. That's what I would have answered for Shane, but I don't know if
Okay.
that correlates, Shane, with what you were trying to get at.
So isn't it not an example of humility, though, to say that you know that there are souls?
Did I say that? Well, I guess the thing is, I'm not relying on myself. That's the good news. I'm just trusting in what you guys might not like this. I'm a Bible thumper, so it's just, I mean, to me, that's where my confidence would come from. So I don't think I'm boasting and like boasting in myself and what I know, but I guess I'm boasting confident in what I think the Word of God says, teaches about it.
Oh, okay.
So it's something I don't think I could have known otherwise. Maybe it is an inconclusive, maybe to the rational mind, the soul is totally unprovable kind of thing. I'm sure, like, I don't think I totally understand the soul. Sorry, can you hear me? I don't think I understand the soul. But I think I know just a little bit about it, which I think has some. I think it makes sense. It makes. What do I say? It makes sense.
Okay.
I don't think it really confuses you. I think it kind of clarifies things for the Christian mind. So.
Okay. So, how come I don't think that I know anything about the soul, but you think you do, even though we both read the Bible?
In the end, okay, do we read the Bible? Well, I mean, I kind of read that thing from Genesis 2:7. Maybe you can read that. We can all read that, but you guys think that's like an accurate? I think that's an accurate picture of reality, or what happened. So to me, that just explains all I need to know about it. And in a way, I'm just kind of like in my comments there that Reid was trying to get to earlier. I'd say those comments just come from Genesis 2:7, basically.
Okay.
Even the idea that the spirit departs from a living body.
I just want to say, Reid, that makes me so hungry. I wish you could just like send me a slice. So Justin wrote here in the comments. No, not at all. Trust me. I'm just trying to make light of the situation by talking about your pizza. But here in the comments, it says, the positive evidence is that we know there is something different between a dead body and a living body. I'm trying to argue we lack biological information. So I suppose if we were to create a scenario, let's say it's like 200 or 300 years in the future, and we found a way to completely eliminate like the decay of a body, or maybe the decay of a brain, and we were able to shut down absolutely everything in a human body so that it's identical to a dead person in every way materially. And like, I don't know, like like some sort of, I'm thinking of like some sort of chamber, some sort of like life preserving chamber, like in Aliens or something. And we like sustain a dead body from decaying for like a whole year and then bring it back to life. Would that be evidence that there isn't a soul? Or is that not a disconfirmation? In other words, in what scenario could we hypothetically test this and have a scenario in which we can prove this idea false? Is there any test we could do to prove it false?
Frankenstein. I think it's all Frankenstein. Just make a real life Frankenstein, and I think that proves.
Okay, so let me interrupt for a moment. I'm going to read out a statement. I want you to imagine some third parties coming into our conversation, and I want you to judge their ability to whether or not this is a valid claim. A test that cannot identify a failure is a valid test. Do you agree or disagree to that? A test
again?
that cannot identify a failure is a valid test. I'll write it in the comments too.
No, yeah, that there is no way to test for a soul. It's so from a Christian perspective, it's like you would believe that God literally came down and communicated with people, and that people who can see what he's talking about understand the truth of what he's talking about. So there are two types of people. Either one, people who have experienced God communicating to them, that would be the truth, where the truth claim gains validity, or people who that has not occurred with. So it's not, so from a Christian perspective, it's not an imperial question about whether there is or isn't a God. From the way God in the form of Christ talks about himself, it's like he's offered the opportunity for you to see the truth of what he's saying, and it's either happened for you or not, and I find that a lot of modern Christians try to treat God like, or the kind of claims that are made by Christians, as if they're falsifiable or could be argued for or against, whereas I would put forward that you either come into the Christian fold and experience and see the truth of what they're talking about, or you don't, and it comes back from an epistemological standpoint of how one decides what is true in the way that they choose to see reality, so it's not a matter of tests or not tests. That's the other framework, whatever framework presumably that you would have, or or an empiricist framework. It doesn't jive with the Christian understanding.
I see. So it sounds like a soul is not an empirical question. Is that right?
It's an empirical question for a Christian because you've experienced the truth of Christ's message. So empirically for you, it's existed because you've experienced the truth of that.
Oh, that's empirical?
Well, let me maybe I need to take a step back. What's the word empirical mean?
Is it the case or not the case?
Measurable in reality.
Like observable, you can witness it.
Mm-hmm. Externally, that anyone could hypothetically discover through their senses.
Yes, I guess it would be based on or concerned with verifiable or observation or experience, rather than theory or pure logic. Then yes, it would be an empirical question in that respect. Yeah.
Oh, it is an empirical.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, then is it testable? Like what hypothetically could happen in reality that could shift our confidence one way or the other?
Like what is the empirical evidence that someone like Reid or Nathan or I could see that would convince us that souls exist?
Okay, well then I think I'll modify what I said, and I'll correct to it's something you would test in your own heart. I think would be the better answer. You test it for yourself. I don't think you could concoct an objective outside of the individual test. Like I don't think you could have the official experiment that was run, that was measured outside of the human subjective experience, that either verified or unverified unverified it, unless Jesus decided to come back and like open a YouTube channel and made it really easy for everybody. So yeah.
Okay.
I'll just go straight to the disconfirmation question then. What would open your mind to the idea that that souls don't exist? Is there anything?
How come you guys don't like the Frankenstein answer? Give me a perfectly healthy dead human body and bring it to life, and then you prove the soul doesn't exist. You can animate life. If you can give life, then
how long would you need to wait?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean?
I think you mean you'd have to animate it from scratch.
Oh, like an actual Frankenstein. So like
not even give him all the
So how come how come your standard of disconfirmation is something that's currently impossible?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And can you hold your little microphone up to your mouth from your headphones? That
Sorry.
helps. Yeah.
Why is my test currently impossible? I mean, it's not impossible, is it, guys? I mean, I know you.
Well,
like,
that's far
I mean,
not.
like, oh, I should rephrase that. Something that we're not currently able to do.
That's fine if it's testable in principle empirically.
Yeah.
Just come up with a
agree.
hypothetical disconfirmation criteria that you could experience. And you said a Frankenstein. If we made a Frankenstein, that would be something that could disconfirm it for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Well, why would that? Why would
Get
it
to work.
confirm for you? I think isn't it inevitable that we will create? I think it's fairly much inevitable. We will create things that will look just as if they're alive, for all the same reasons, Justin, earlier that you were saying. It's muddled whether or not something's biologically alive or not by whatever metrics that people want to use. You're going to run into the same problem. You said something like that when you were talking about the pulse and the heart. Eventually, human beings will create something where you will not know whether you're interacting with a human. You will interact with something that you could causally chase the chain of its creation to a human hand, and then without having to run a whole bunch of tests, you won't know whether you're interacting with something that was God's creation or human created. Like, I think that's fairly much inevitable. I still haven't decided whether I would consider that a lie. I would tend to think so. I mean, now we're getting off into a different topic here, but I don't see why that would change anything. Just because humans are able to do like some form of like animation wizardry, that's not going to change my faith. I don't see why it would change anything.
Is that the question you're asking? If we created an artificial intelligent being?
Well, artificial Frankenstein. Say you stitch together, just like Justin said, you stitch together a whole bunch of human body parts or whatever, grow them in a lab, however you want to do it, zip zap, and whatever you got to do, boom, it looks and walks and talks just as if it's a human, Maybe even lifts as much weight as Andrew, he just goes for it,
Okay.
Would Frankenstein have a soul if we could do that? Or
why couldn't God
Frankenstein's
put a
monster?
soul in that being? I don't see why not. Weren't we supposed to do greater works than him in creation?
So even under this circumstance, it seems like it wouldn't be disconfirmation criteria. In other words, I'm hearing, and please someone stop me if I don't understand. My goal is to understand. It sounds like there isn't a scenario in which this idea could be proven false. So, like,
you'd have to lose your faith in Christ. It would be preceding. You'd have to reject the revelation in its entirety, right? So, like, something would have to occur where you decided you no longer believed in the revelation. Your heart no longer saw that truth as true. You no longer saw God. Ergo, you're no longer going to accept all the claims and faith claims that you accepted from that original proposition, because you no longer see God, and therefore you no longer see His role in creation.
So the scenario in which you would not believe in a soul anymore is if you didn't believe in all theological ideas.
Well, the principle, how your faith in God's going to manifest in what specific claims, but personally to lose the claim of a soul, I don't think you could lose it without losing your faith in the claim that God exists in a Christian sense. I think that domino would have to fall before the soul one would fall. I don't see how it could be any other way.
So
you have to view God as the total source of all life, not a man.
Okay.
So if you could animate a human body, then you would persuade me that you had a material means of generating life. And first off, that would plainly contradict what the Bible says. Okay? And basically, God, because you could make life. You would totally I guess I'm trying to say that for the Christian, I think God is necessarily the source of life. He's the only source of life. There's no other source of life.
So God can't act through me to create life. He can through a sperm, but he can't through me animating a Frankenstein.
This is what I'm hearing. A
No,
belief
I
in the
wouldn't give it
soul
to you.
requires the belief in a God. Like
I think so.
if God
I was
exists-
asking you guys for a secular definition of soul. You don't really. I don't think there's even a basis for a secular idea of soul. Like, why would you? Am I wrong?
I don't use.
What if you could? And I'm not saying this is my belief, but what if you believe that?
Although Aristotle
soul
spoke soul,
is-
so maybe we could back
what if you
time
believe-
a little, see what motivated
What if you
Aristotle,
believe?
kind of thing.
Oh, okay. What if you believe a soul is like love?
I don't know what you guys think.
Are you asking us?
Yeah. I mean, soul.
Why
like,
would I?
I
My
don't know
question
what
would be,
for
why would
living-
I say love is a soul? Nice.
I mean, I like the movie Soul, and I
the
think
movie Soul's great.
this is the classic, depiction of it. It's a thing that is like before humans on Earth exists, made by God,
Mhm.
or made by some spiritual realm, like in Soul, and it's a thing that humans get in life, and then it's a thing that is separated from a human at death and goes on to an afterlife. Whatever that process, whatever that the thing is that allows that process to happen, is the soul.
Yeah, that's
Is
my
that a movie?
understanding as well.
You're saying there's a Disney movie about
Yeah, it's a
that?
great movie. Pixar, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tearjerker.
Loved it. It's really good.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Interesting.
It's a great
No, I
date night
haven't
movie.
read it.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
There's belief in soul.
Is this a question we're talking about, or is that relevant now?
I think that's relevant. Like, I think that you could believe in a soul without believing in a God. Like, you could
I've
believe.
met people like that.
Okay. So what did you, people like that who you've talked to? Why do they believe that there's a soul but not a God?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask them.
Yeah,
Though,
okay.
generally speaking, like I've heard people who they self-identify as agnostic on the position of God, but then they're like, but I know I felt, the presence of my grandmother after she passed away or something like that. I mean, I've talked to so many people about beliefs that I've come across it. Though I've got lots of questions for them, as I'm sure you guys have.
Yeah,
Right.
I just want to be able to have confidence that I'm not being fooled, that I'm not being led to, that I don't have a belief that I can't tell is mistaken, that I don't want to be stuck believing something false for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
why
that's
why
my
not?
position, too.
Why is that a bad thing?
I think it's virtuous to believe more true things than false things. I think it helps society and myself navigate reality better.
And to me, it's about the tools of epistemology we use to determine things that are true. So I want to be consistent across the board for all things. So in other words, I don't want to give a pass to some beliefs using certain tools. So I would like to think that my belief structure involves certain tests that would move my confidence one way or the other, up or down, on all things. And if I possess a belief in which I find myself at a high degree of confidence on a scale, but I don't know a scenario that I could actually accomplish within my lifetime to drop that confidence, then I might be stuck believing in something that isn't the case, and I'd be fully unaware. And if I give one belief a pass, then I might be prone to giving other beliefs passes, and in which case I wouldn't know which ones to choose and which ones not to choose.
Okay. It sounds like one way that I might be different from you two, Reid and Nathan, although I don't know about for sure for you, Nathan, but for you, Reid, I like, for me personally, I try to have my beliefs based on what has more evidence for it than less evidence. However, I don't think that it's inherently bad for someone to believe that something is not true necessarily. I think you can believe things that are not true, and it's possible that can have no negative consequences for reality, which is part of why I believe that there's nothing wrong with people following any religion they want to, even though I don't personally believe in any God.
Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong about all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it could be completely inconsequential. And then it just comes to, I have a virtue that I want to go, virtue ethics style. I want to be honest. I don't want to lie. And that includes, I don't want to lie to myself about things. So it's like it's an injustice towards myself if I believe something false for mere comfort or other non-epistemic reasons.
Okay.
I think true things are unifying. It's another way to sum it up.
Well, in the sake of, like, in terms of religion, though, from our perspective, like, you could actually argue that truth, that things that are not true can be unifying too. Like, even if we're not talking about religion, even if we're talking about, like, cults, like people who place themselves as God and stuff like that, there can be a unifying effect among cults. Or if we're not talking about cults, if we're talking about religion, and, like, for example, let's say that, like, we can assume that all Christians believe in God, and since I think that at least I don't believe in God, that people are still united by this belief in God that I think is false.
There's an implicit problem, though, in this wanting to believe things that you can prove, because you're making a claim that you're going to be able to prove all the
Not
things.
Quite what I.
No?
Not
Sorry,
quite.
Jeremy?
I think what reader.
Well,
Go ahead, Reid.
finish your thought.
No,
I
sorry.
want to make sure he gets it out.
Okay. So if you're going to believe in things that are verifiable, is that what you said? Or you wanted to attempt to be able to have whole beliefs that are verifiable or testable? How would you correct my phrasing in a more there?
Of the set of propositions that apply to reality, like empirically, I would like for those claims to be maximally testable. And not everything I believe needs to be empirically testable. Some propositions or claims can be, tested in other ways, like thought experiments or other reasonable ways. But anything that is an empirical claim, I would like for that to be maximally testable, so I can shift my confidence, so I can proportion my confidence to the evidence.
Okay, there's an implicit claim there that A, that's the most desirable way to approach things, and B, that you're not going to run into any materially important claims that you will not be able to test through your own abilities in your lifetime. You're discounting the risk of running into claims that you will not be able to properly assess your confidence level on, that would be desirable for you to believe in. How
do you know that they would be desirable?
Well, you're betting you're discounting that there are such claims. Like, for instance, I'll phrase it a different way.
I'm not discounting that.
Potentially, there could be future means of assigning confidence to claims in the future that are far greater than what you have now, and it could reveal that you should have assigned greater confidence. So you're assuming the best way to solve that problem is to go with this confidence allocation schema that you're using. Now, that claim that you should be using rationalistic is probably not the right phrase, but there's a variety of techniques that you use to assign confidence to claims.
That's fair.
So so
rationality.
So you're basing you're claiming that schema of approaches, or that what's that word? That consortium of approaches that you would use is the best way to approach it. Now, that claim itself, which is the best way to approach generating truth claims, with what set of evidence do you start testing that realm? Okay, because I assume I assume it's a priori to a certain extent, or a lot of people don't feel the need to justify that this rationalistic, imperialistic, and I don't mean to pigeonhole you into those techniques, but there seems to be this I would perceive rather untested or assumed to be true claim that this is the best package to go with. Is that making any sense?
For me personally, though, I wouldn't necessarily say that the rationalistic approach is the best way to find our beliefs. I would say it's just what I prefer for most of my beliefs, but not necessarily all of them. You could say that I have evidence that I love my parents and my family, but it's not the same kind of evidence as scientific evidence. And I just think, I prefer to have, like I said, I prefer to have beliefs that are based on evidence if they can be based on evidence, and as much as possible, but not all of them are based on evidence. But I just think that for me personally, your approach to believe in God or souls or anything like that, if we look at the evidence-based approach to things, that actually is a way to have some sort of way to know why you believe something. And for me, since religious faith in particular does not appeal to me, I don't see any reason to have those sorts of beliefs, because not only do I not see any reason to believe in them, I don't have this sense of faith in them that Shane, you and Justin have.
But I'm saying, applying your own standard, that the method that you use to decide which claims to believe in, how much have you applied that very method to the method itself? How much effort have you spent? On what basis have you evaluated all the possible ways of arriving at confidence allocation? Because you claim okay, I want to allocate my confidence appropriately, but what kind of experiment do you run to decide which confidence allocation game are you
So
going
can I somewhat go ahead, Reid?
I haven't. Well, have you started reading Kindly Inquisitors yet, Andrew?
No, I haven't yet.
That's the meta game I think Justin is talking about. Liberal science. Science is the thing that we use to test empirical claims. Liberal science is the meta game, the game of liberal science from the book that is argued to be the thing that we should be trying to play in terms of all knowledge, not just empirical knowledge. So I can go on about that.
Go on.
Basically, we follow two main rules. No one gets final say, and no one gets personal authority about any type of knowledge claim. So it uses the liberal principle, which is that the checking of each by each is the best way for all of us to get to knowledge. Each one of us checking each other, who someone makes a claim, and then someone else criticizes that, and then through this process of public criticism, where all of us do this together, and it's like an evolutionary thing. Hypotheses are the units of selection, and they are what's the evolutionary analogy? They are selected against using public criticism, and over time, this weeds down propositions into less wrong propositions. That's the game of liberal science.
Okay. And this it's interesting that you would choose a level of proposition, right? Because has anybody here listened to the Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson first discussion, Darwinian truth versus
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yes.
So is the best field for determining the value of ideas an individual's ability to dissect them with language? Is it an individual's ability to act those ideas out in reality and have it get the results they want from reality? Is it the ability of those ideas manifested in a group of individuals acting them out and getting the result that they desire from those ideas? The best test is the best test that groups of people over a year's timeline acting out those ideas in reality, getting the results they desire. Is the best ideas the ones that are acted out by groups of individuals for centuries, getting the desired outcomes that they want? It just, this is the problem this is to switch to my own bias. This is the problem I have with this kind of calculating version of truth derivation, because it's like a lot of quasi arbitrary scope things get decided, because it's like what this group of people at this point in time with our limited computing power of our brains decides is true is what we're going to go with. Whereas the machine of all human civilization, computing, interacting with all past reality, it's harder to bring all that evidence to bear into a form that the five of us can use language to decide which propositions we want to assign confidence to, right? So is that making any sense?
Well, Shane, like for me personally, I don't even believe in objective truth, but I still think that I still like to have reasons for why I believe something. And I don't, like, for me personally, I've never found any reason to believe in souls or believe in or maybe I did when I was a kid, because I was a Christian when I was a kid, but as an adult, at least, let's say, I've never found any reason to believe in God or believe in souls. And if we're talking about like what specifically you were saying in terms of like what should the standard of evidence be, like how many people over how long of a period of time, I would say that generally speaking, for me, the more people believe something over the longest period of time means it's more likely for there to at least be good reasons for believing that, even though, like I said, I don't believe in objective truth, because I think this is as close to what we can get to that, even though it's almost inevitably going to change in the future.
Wonder what Justin's thinking right now.
Yeah, Justin, we haven't heard from you in a while.
That's interesting. I'm just listening. I mean, back to what Reid was saying, like what he said makes sense at a level. Kind of, you said you want things to be tested. You just said it so well. Okay, you want things to be testable so you can adjust your confidences based on the results, and you want like things to be maximally something. You really said it clearly. You said it very clearly. But I just worry that just keeps you in a trap. That just keeps you in a little it's just such slow progress. Life's so short, man. You just can't thoroughly vet everything. And there's really no limit to how much doubt. Oh, sorry if you can hear me. There's no limit to how much doubt. Like we see it all the time. We can have any opinion about anything. and somebody will always be able to find some article or something countering that opinion. So I fear that when people really try to like make probabilities of what's true or not true, they really just stay 50-50. They don't really know how to assign probabilities to things. You know, it's either true or it's not true. Hell, I don't know which one it is. I just choose the one that's convenient for me. I don't think there's ever really like, well, it's starting to balance. Ooh, I'm finally persuaded.
Why do you think that?
Why do I think that? Well, first off, because probabilities is like a word we use all the time. I don't think we have any idea what probability is like. I really think people stay always 50-50 on everything. You know, so like their confidence is, I don't know, I'm sure there's a doubt. And besides, Reid, maybe it's more to your point. I feel like a lot of things of what's true are not like tautologically true. You know, like they're not just logical deductions. And what's true could very well be improbable. You know, what's probable, maybe that goes to Shane's point, is what's maybe what's an implicit assumption in your method is that you kind of assume that what's most probable is what's true. I know that's like an awkward kind of thing, but
what is like, Justin, Shane's, what are your presuppositions, and do you think that those are better presuppositions, and if so, why?
Okay, well, how about this? We keep talking about empirical evidence, right? I'd say there's a lot of empirical evidence that God created the world. As evidence, I'd say, like, just look outside. To a lot of people, even for me, you know, a long time ago, that wasn't evidence at all. But then something just happens in your mind where it switches and you can't even... It's like... It's just overwhelming empirical evidence. Okay, maybe I'm getting off track. You're asking what are my presuppositions.
How is that empirical?
You just see with your eyes, man. It just hits you right in the face. It's like...
So how come I don't see it?
Because you think you can make it. You see it, but you think you made it.
I don't think I made it.
Yeah, you might. You could be all simulation. You think you're creator.
No, I don't believe in simulations either. I also don't believe I'm a god.
No?
No.
I thought all you atheist types... Oh, I'm joking.
Not me, man.
That's Mormons.
Yeah.
But
so let me try to sum up in a way more layman's version of kind of what Reid said earlier. And Reid, please stop me if I'm not on track.
Sure.
So we were talking about, like, Reid was saying no one's the authority. And okay, so Shane brought this up earlier. Maybe I'm rewinding even before that. Shane was talking earlier about why would you need a counter, a scenario, like some sort of... I'm actually getting a little mixed up. I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrased it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Essentially, we were talking, though, about falsifiability and the importance of falsifiability, and whether or not maximally testing something was the best way to go. So this is kind of like the best analogy I can think of. Imagine there's a classroom of students, and the teacher gives out an exam, and it's a multiple choice exam. And it's A, B, C, D all the way down. And every single student fills it out differently. Though every student gets back an A+ on the test. No matter how each person fills out the test, everyone passes. Everyone succeeds and gets an A+, 100%. I think what we were saying about maximally testing things is that would be a scenario in which the teacher isn't grading anything. And what we would like is a scenario in which there is one way to fill out the test and we can discern who's filling it out a way to point at a test that didn't work, or a test that reveals a hypothetically false scenario. And so if we're believing in a thing, but every test we do only gives us an A+, no matter how we dice it, no matter how we examine this idea, and there isn't a hypothetical scenario in which it could fail, like if we wrote all D's down the test or all A's down the test, then we might not be grading our students in that classroom. Would you agree that the teacher might not be grading in that scenario if everyone always got an A+ on the exam? Okay. And the meta question was, how do we know the teacher is grading in the right way? And I suppose we would all need to work together to ask whether or not the teacher's a good teacher in that sense, in that regard. I don't know if I explained that very well. I kind of did that backwards, because normally I do that in question form, but I kind of just said it instead. So does that make sense? Is that why? Would you either Shane or Justin, would you consider it important that our tests our beliefs are testable in such a way as we could recognize a scenario in which they are proven not to be the case? It's not so much that we require our beliefs to be proven. It's more like, right now I'm wondering, is it important to us to be able to identify when our beliefs could be hypothetically proven wrong?
That is the more desirable situation to find yourself in. It's very easy to do with a bridge, for instance. The bridge either succeeds or doesn't succeed. I find that some of the more complex things in reality, it's not so easy to run such a test, right? Somebody comes up to you and they're making a lot of bad decisions. It's a common friend. Okay, one person might say, okay, let's try to teach them. One person might say, let's try to threaten them. Let's try to offer them unconditional love. Let's try to offer them tough love. With this type of situation, it's like, and we all sit down with the liberal science propositional approach. We're not going to be able to sit there and with our piece of paper around a table. I mean, we can come up with the best guess, but now we're back at Justin's probability situation, where at the end of the day, are we really assigning weighted probabilities based on something that's getting much more sophisticated than intuition? I mean, perhaps we could train that intuition, you could argue, through scientific studies, or we've tried the tough love thing with this guy 5 times, but you see the problem that we're driving towards, right? And I feel like a lot of things in reality end up in this state where, yes, obviously, it'd be better to have a commonly defined teacher analogy that we can apply consistently, and things that lend themselves to that, more power to us that we can do that. But a lot of the most challenging things in life are precisely challenging because they don't lend themselves towards that. And a big part of why I've adopted my belief system is because I've tried acting them out in my life in a way where assessing whether it's working. Yeah, I mean, it's how I feel, but it's a very non-linear, non-explicatable kind of situation. So I
can see why that would be the case in scenarios that involve like manner of taste and preference and things like that, and determining whether or not a decision is good or a decision is bad. Though if it's determining whether or not something is true, is that held to a different standard?
Well,
in other words, can I hear what you're saying tied into the teacher equation or the teacher analogy? Is there some way, because I'm trying to understand, is there a way in which what you said? Go ahead, Reid.
I think he's saying fitness should be above truth in terms of our ultimate standards, in terms of potentially some ideas and some beliefs.
Fitness is truth to me.
Fitness is truth. Yeah, that's
the highest form of truth. Either it functions or it doesn't. Like, because how else are you going to cash out a belief? Like, you have to test it. Like, what's the ultimate form of testing? Acting it out.
So is it what's like well, what meets the criteria of fitness for each individual person? Like, is it different for each individual person? Or can something, like, if something works really well for someone and it doesn't work well for another person, does that not matter?
Well, this is the problem. Like, what standards the teacher's supposed to grade on? Like, before we even decide on how the teacher's going to grade, we decide what's the teacher grading on. Like, that question
Mhm.
alone could stop us from even running the test in the first place, right? Like, because now we have to define what is good, what is desirable, based on what, purpose, what lack of, you know what I mean? This is the big problem of what you're going to ground your beliefs in, right? So,
Let's say it's math.
well, then you're assuming you can create a model that can actually capture the phenomenon in question. And again, with trivial example, like, again, with a bridge, fairly easy. With what's behind that door, even easier, perhaps. With what's the best way to conduct an election over the next 200 years, hard to reduce that to a mathematical, propositional, evaluative criteria. You know, how
Are you
to
saying,
structure. Yeah.
are you saying that, like, there can't be a test for like whether God exists or whether souls exist because it's not reducible?
I'm trying to honor what I'm hearing from your guys, and I would say it's obviously much more desirable to agree upon a standard test that would make sense. Okay. At the same time, like, look at the problem they're having with evaluating schools. No, I hope I'm not jumping around too much, but even the standardized testing to evaluate the quality of schools, like, the efficacy of that approach, I don't think has even worked. And you would think that's a relatively easy thing to evaluate. Is the school actually educating? You know, and even in that question, I don't think they've reduced it to a straight empirical question, right? Or do we have, or can the five of us, how long would it take us to evaluate to what extent those tests are even evaluating the phenomenon in question, let alone determining what the results of these phenomenological examinations empirically revealed about the phenomenon in question?
Yeah, I don't think we need to be pigeonholed into one single test in order for things to qualify as knowledge. As long as we're playing this game where no one gets final say and no one gets personal authority, there could be a whole set of tests that could be in play. Fitness could be one of our criteria, and all of the different things that we believe can be put to the test in many different ways, and whatever just becomes this residual X factor of persuasiveness at the end of the day on any given day is our knowledge. And
I agree.
That's just how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, God, I'm curious.
What I'm thinking of here, kind of. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. You go ahead, Justin.
All I was going to throw in is, I wonder if there's a difference in agriculture as a science versus.
Put your mic closer again.
Sorry, guys. In agriculture, this is what I'm trying to throw in here, okay? Like Christianity, I don't think I can convince the world, that we're going to have some common consensus based on some deductive system. Like, it's never going to happen. Because the test, like, I just don't know. It's not going to happen. Much like, I don't think you could get a bunch of different farmers to agree on what the best way to grow a certain bean is. You know what I mean? Like, we could spend a long time kind of getting abstract about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the best soil and the best seed and the sun, exposure, etc. We could get real scientific on it. You know what I mean? But at least there, I think all we care about is whether something grows or not grows. You know, because basically, what am I trying to say? I think that's what Shane's trying to get at. Is where I think the Christian point of view is supposed to be much more pragmatic. You know, by your fruits shall you know them. So for me, I know I was guilty a long time of just rationalizing everything. You know, just trying to be too logical, trying to be too smart. You know, like epistemology. I used to know what all those words meant. You know, but now they kind of get all fuzzy. I don't really care anymore. Now I'm kind of much more worried about
So am I hearing you say that it's more important that ideas are good than that they are true?
Yeah, because the true, it's like we're not even. How do we know what's true? That's what I mean. Like we can know it's true by like logic, but it's tautologically true. You know, like we can do some logic deduction. But then I think we have to have some sort of inductive thing of what's true, which true. I guess that's the thing. It's a different true. That's the thing. We're talking about different truths. I think that's what we just found out.
Okay.
We're not necessarily doing like the Boolean true. Is the soul like all the questions we raised today? I don't even think. Isn't that mysterious? Isn't that what Pontius Pilate asks Jesus Christ? No, that's what Pontius Pilate asks. What is truth?
I love it.
What is truth?
You want to give it a go?
I think that's the thing. You can't give it a go. Give it a go. You can't give it a go, man.
You can't?
No, I don't
Have
think
we
so.
been doing that?
I like it. What is the case or what is not the case?
We might have a difficult time talking about what to consider true if we don't yet agree on how to define what the truth is.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
Now
how about this? So this is
questions.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I love this stuff.
Here we go.
Okay, agree or disagree to this statement? Or actually, no. Let's let it be an open question. Just what is truth? What do you think? You want to give it a go? Do you want to try?
Mine is whatever is the result of public criticism.
Whatever is the result of public criticism.
Okay, you got to elaborate on that one there. Make me feel stupid.
Any beliefs that people have, they can submit them to public checking, public criticism, and any form of criticism, you know, is it a fit? Is this belief fit for humans to have? Is this belief consistent with established facts? Is this belief consistent with just any type of test you want to put at it? Whatever, and then someone says, yeah, and we do that for everything. And some people say, well, no, I can test this belief and I get this result empirically. That can be one form of test through science, you know, classically. The power of science is not empirical testing. It's the social process that makes it special. So it's the ability to have everything be open for criticism from everybody. And then over time, beliefs get weeded down and we have things that have survived public criticism. And that is our knowledge on any given day. And we just revise that over time.
Okay. It sounds like I might have a different answer to this question than anyone else in this chat. I might guess, because I would say that I don't know what truth is. I don't presume to know what it is.
You don't commit to a firm answer on the question?
Nope.
This
is why you and I argue all the time.
I know, too.
Yeah.
Mine would be that which is the case, irrespective to anyone's opinion or belief. Or another way to put it is a statement that corresponds to reality.
That's it. That itself, though, to play devil's advocate here for a second, though, the correspondence theory of truth is itself a philosophical position and a particular way of looking at it.
Yeah, like there's a landscape in front of us, and there are two painters, and they're painting the landscape. One paints something that's nearly identical to a photograph, and that's the most true interpretation of the two painters, because the other one drew a painting of a dog, which is nothing like the landscape before them. And if their goal is to paint the landscape, then one of those painters has more accurately painted the landscape than the other. And what Reid was saying is it's a collective effort to determine together which one has pieced it together the best. And we could always be wrong about what we're looking at.
Okay.
And
That's
the idea that we could be wrong is what gives me credence to say what the truth is. It's the opposite of being wrong. Like, be that another way to put it.
Yeah, that doubt, that value of being open to being wrong about whatever, forever, about anything, is the thing.
True is what there is a world out there, and you're true or not true depending on whether you represent those objects as they stand or don't stand. I mean, I can work with that, but I think where we maybe separate then is the world just that material world, or is that world that kind of more than just what is the case? It's
Yeah.
it's not subject to,
Yeah. What is the case? That's another way to put it.
you know.
The thing that gives me motivation to believe in true things is how it feels to be wrong. Once I have some serious experience with being wrong on all sorts of stuff, especially lately in my own personal life. And to me, the truth is just the opposite of that. It's the concept of the opposite of being just dead wrong. The number of Tic Tacs in this box is even, and I pour them out and I count them and they're odd, for example. And the truth is just the opposite of the incorrect interpretation to me. It's this idea that our interpretation is maximally corresponding.
The problem I have with
I gotta
it is
say,
that- Okay, you go first, Justin.
Well, I was gonna say maybe I can elaborate more. I think you guys got way too much confidence in like scientific consensus. I think it's totally messed up. I mean,
Why do you guys have so much confidence?
who, me?
Yeah,
Because I don't have
both of you.
confidence in me. It's not me I'm confident in.
Yeah, but how do you know you're confident?
That's the good
that-
news.
Why are you confident that it's not confidence in yourself that you have?
Well, you kind of answered it yourself. You said something that's been proven over time. The longer the time, the more likely it is to be true.
And that
So-
applies to Christianity?
Don't it? Name me an
How
older
does it?
book.
So
Epic of Gilgamesh.
something being old means that it's more likely to be true?
Yeah. You said that.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. Didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, something that's old has been tested much more. That's what I would say. Something that's recent, black holes, dark matter, those are just hypotheses, rationalizations to support theories that have no basis. And there's too many. The problem with science is there's too many academic careers that depend on it all. It's all N+1. You know, like if I disprove this guy, actually I'm implicitly disproving everybody underneath it. And it's too embarrassing for them. Science will never admit a major mistake.
Couldn't you say the same thing? Couldn't you say the same thing about theologians?
Sure. But who cares what theologians have to say?
Well, what makes the Christian belief better then?
Better. What makes it better? What makes it better?
Well, you would need to have a sophisticated theory of the good to decide what is better or not. This is the issue with these definitions of truth, is because you're going to have, for instance, like reality. So I don't know which one is which of the two of you. I want to start referring to you by names. So Nathan, who has the hat on? I'm going to guess that's Reid.
Reid, yeah.
Okay. So Nathan said, like, what corresponds to reality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to so now we have to have like some sort of rubric to decide which model or description of, like, what definition of reality is the best definition of reality, so that we can use this other model we're constructing over here to see if it corresponds to the other model that we use to construct. And so this implicit definition of good and desirable is going to cause you a lot of issues. So part of what Christianity does is it
true that something's good?
Well, it sets forth the definition. It defines some of these terms. So and then, you know, to a non-believer, they're arbitrary, or they're faith claims or whatever. But you have certain grounding points you're going to work from. You know, so this is like when I was I took a geography class. The guy was a very, very big green, pro responsible use of environment, whatnot. He started off the very first lecture with definition of heritage, culture, value, like heritage as values, customs. He's like, well, why am I talking about heritage in a geography class? You know, are we supposed to be counting lakes and streams and oil and resources? He's like, well, because we don't agree on what's desirable to achieve or how to go about achieving things, then it's not going to matter what we count, or we're not going to decide on whether we should even protect the forest because we haven't decided the forest is valuable, or if it's valuable, why is it valuable, right? So I think before you ask a question like what is true, you need a group of people who are on the same page about what's desirable, you know, because ultimately your truth is going to serve what you think is good.
Yeah, it sounds like we're juggling a lot of different words with different definitions. So like on one hand, we're talking what is good, and whether or not goodness is objective or subjective. And then we're talking about truth, whether or not, and how to define truth. And then we're talking about whether or not it's good to know true things, or if there's some other virtue to true things. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Did you have one that you wanted to stick with, or one that you wanted to talk about? Like, are we talking about the virtue of believing in true things, or are we talking about the definition of truth? Or
yeah, that's something I want to know too. I also want to know, both for both of you guys, Shane and Justin, would you consider it true that God exists?
I consider God truth. See, the thing is like, if you go back in time, what was true to like early humans, if you're going to go for evolutionary standpoint, it's what worked for the tribe. Okay, you couldn't really separate what was true from what worked for your tribe. It wasn't possible, because if things stopped working for your tribe, you ceased to exist. So it was kind of moot what you believed, right? And it's only become increasingly possible to kind of abstract yourself out of your tribe, abstract yourself out of reality, and kind of float off into a realm where you can hold a bunch of beliefs that are kind of separated from the reality of your existence, if that makes any sense, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is why we're so divided right now, because it's like it doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's not really gonna matter, you know, what we say is true or not, because we're all acting out such different dramas at this point. So, and I don't know.
If all life ceased to exist, would there be anything true?
I don't think all life can cease to exist.
I could go yes or no.
Before there was any life, was there anything true?
Yeah, God. is truth. God is
Maybe.
the source of
Okay.
all things.
So why do you believe that God is true and the source of all things, and why do you think that that's good?
I felt it. That's the basis. It's the basis of my subjective experience. Like that's
Okay.
the best barometer I have is what's worked and resonated with me. You know,
And is it bad that I or anyone else has not felt that and it doesn't work for me?
it might be. It might
Why?
be.
It's sad. Is it bad? It's
Why?
you're lacking. You're a man. You're a starving man on an island.
How do you know
You got
that?
no water.
How come I don't feel bad about it at all?
I don't know that you don't.
That's not a good sign.
I know that I don't. I know how I feel as much as I can possibly know anything.
I put forward humans don't know a lot.
So do you know how you feel about God then? Can you trust how you feel that God exists and that God existing is good?
With the company.
What was that?
Me? Oh, I was saying. You asked me. What did you ask me? Do you know how it
I
feels?
was asking Shane, but this can apply to both of you.
Well, I'll let Shane answer. Then I'll answer.
Well, what I would say is I would question to what extent you've sincerely tried or tested both approaches. I would take your own standard back at you and say
Okay.
you're obviously each of you is trying your own confidence allocation liberal science method to some extent. I would hazard to guess you're earnestly doing so, but to what extent have you earnestly tried testing out other approaches to governing your life, to governing your confidence allocation schema?
I've tried Christianity. You know that I was raised by ministers, right? And I read the Bible for the third time or so recently, like a year or two ago. And I still go to church every once in a while because my mom still preaches every once in a while.
Well,
For me personally, like how I run my life is a different subject matter altogether than talking about whether or not a fact is true.
See, but facts presuppose the scientific worldview. A fact's a recent definition of what's true. Like this, a fact is something that's being established vis-a-vis the scientific empirical method. That's pretty much what a fact is. I don't think if you go back 1,200 years and ask somebody what a fact is, they're gonna define it the same way you define it today. You know, so
I'm curious how.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nathan.
I'm just curious how you understand what a fact is, because we might be having different definitions. Maybe
I consider a fact to be what a scientific worldview would claim to be true. That's more or less what a fact is, or what is perhaps trivially or obviously to be the case, or something that is so defined as to be virtually clearly demonstratable to be the only reasonable way of looking at it. Yeah,
something beyond reasonable doubt thing.
Yeah, it's there's certain caliber of discussions, topics, evaluative criteria that it's harder to reduce to facts. Like, is it factual that I'm wearing this hat? Yes. Is it factual that I'm doing a good job of representing Christianity? I don't know. Can that be reduced to facts? Am I doing a good job of representing myself? You know?
In either case, I'm having fun with the discussion, and you guys are really cordially engaging. This is great.
Yeah. Do you want to ask us any other questions? Like, I feel like ganging up on you guys. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. Whatever Andrew wants to do. Whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I had a thought. Okay, because maybe Andrew was asking, well, how come? What'd you say? But actually, I wanted to direct it towards Reid. Because Reid, when you were saying your maximal, reweighting the probabilities and the confidence and the maximal, that's good when you have like confidence in yourself, okay? Like obviously you're pretty confident about your ability to discern, to weigh arguments, like a judge. You have kind of confidence in your ability to judge. Let's say judge like simple things in front of you, like, hey, you got good, you got confidence in yourself. Have you ever considered that you should not be so confident in yourself? Like, what do you do if you were totally in doubt about everything you knew? Meaning, like, how do you get so confident in yourself? Because I was confident in myself too. And I think there's this kind of, it's worth not being so confident in yourself. I feel like that's kind of the way you get led to God a little bit. You really have to diminish yourself. Like for me, I'd say when I was confident in myself, like in my rational, reasonable faculties, I didn't need God. You know what I mean? I'll find a path. I can find a path.
Yeah,
But
I think. Go ahead.
all I would say, the Bible has a thing where it says, you think you can light the fire, the path to the future? That's the thing. It's really about the future we're talking about, like what's going to happen to us. It's not necessarily like about what we're thinking about or what kind of discourse we can have. Like Christian kind of rhetoric and arguments and trying to be persuasive. But I think there is something about the Christian view. It's got to come right back to the world, like very concrete, pragmatic. It's not really about, in a way, it's not so intellectual. I think I can reason with you intellectual, and I would try to persuade you, make the case. But I'd be trying to make the case to bring you back to reality, to be back to like real world, like knocking on wood. Got to get you out of your mind. I know that was my problem, just too much thinking. I was too confident in myself to find a path. And I don't know, you guys ever wonder about that? Do you know the path?
Well, I think you were asking Reid specifically.
Everyone, but I'm just fixed on what Reid said earlier, like kind of just the method, which was, he just said it so clearly.
I think, this is the way.
And it's like, yeah.
The way is the game of liberal science.
Like you're too confident in yourself. That's the issue. You're taking on the whole world.
I don't know what that has.
How are you not too confident in yourself? I have trouble understanding that.
Well, I got compressed, but then I got raised with a different confidence. I'm not confident in me anymore.
I don't understand.
I have a different confidence. A different type of confidence.
So,
maybe it's not.
Would you say? Okay. Would you say that like you're as confident as you were before, but in a different way?
I'd say I'm much more confident than before, also, but in a different way, yeah. Because my confidence rests on different foundations.
Okay. So those foundations are better than Reid's liberal science foundations?
Better. This is how we got to the topic of what's good, of what's better, right? The question of what's
Yeah,
better.
I try to avoid the good, bad stuff. I so try to avoid good, bad until after we get to like what's true and how to determine what's true.
I think. Can I try to recap what I'm hearing him say?
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing him say is that there's a trade-off between confidence in myself and confidence in something external to myself. And one thing that is external to myself that some people have confidence in is a God. And that is one way to ground certain abstract ideas like truth and virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have more confidence in a God to be able to have confidence that those things are real, maybe that, what I'm hearing you say is that has a direct trade-off in confidence in ourselves and potentially confidence in manly way or like humanly secular ways of knowing and ways of living the good life. I think that's what I'm hearing, something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, to be more specific, I'm not trying to make a case that if you believe in a God, you're going to do better. Because in almost all cases, that's a mistake. I.e., I'm not encouraging Babylonian mystery religions as a path. Okay?
Is that what you believe in? A Babylonian mysterious?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about Jesus Christ and, Word of God kind of stuff.
Okay.
Basic stuff, old-fashioned stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
any other questions then for anybody?
like, for example, I feel like I'm not confused anymore about a lot of like philosophy issues, mind, body, soul.
But because of your belief in Jesus, it helps you.
Yes. How it explains.
Be less confused.
It's very simplifying. This is I think
it's pretty rigorous. It's really like see, when I was an atheist, I would just make fun of it and say, "Oh, it's a stupid book. It's all filled with nonsense. You can't even read it. Like, it contradicts itself internally." That's a popular point of view. But actually, I think it's pretty rigorous and consistent. I would like to make a case to you. So that's how it can serve as a new basis for things. Have a new confidence, because I didn't have to sort it out and discover it for myself.
I'm confused. Could you elaborate further about how it's consistent and rigorous?
that's a huge question.
We could go to our favorite, the atheist site, 21 contradictions in the Bible, and go by them one by one and say how they're not contradictions at all. And we could do that sometime. Like, I'm not afraid to read those lists, you know what I mean? I actually literally think they all have reasonable answers.
I would like to ask a question that's more in line with what is truth. Okay, so Nathan said earlier that there's some division between what he acts out and what he believes is true. How did you this distinction you made? Do you remember?
Sure.
You remember that? Could you expand upon that? And then after you expand upon that, Reid, is this how you would do you guys have this in common, or where would you differ with what Nathan's about to say?
I don't know.
Okay, so we're about to find out. So, like, I have a favorite movie, though my favorite movie isn't the best movie necessarily, right? So, like, my favorite movie, I love The Fifth Element. It's one of my favorite movies. I also love The Matrix and Star Wars and all that stuff. So, like, if I have like a top 10 list, my preference or my matter of taste, there can be truth claims about it. In other words, I could be lying to you about which is my favorite movie, in which case it wouldn't be true that, The Fifth Element's my favorite movie. Maybe it's some other movie and I'm just not telling you what it is. And so, though my preference or the manner of taste that I use is wholly separate from the best interpretation of the external world. So, in other words, I got some Tic Tacs, and we can talk about the Tic Tacs. And maybe I say the number of Tic Tacs in here are even. And you say, no, they're odd. Before we even pour them out and count them, in my worldview, one of us is correct. The other one is mistaken. And there is a true number. Though the way I live my life and how I make friends and how I create preferences, those things are, and what I consider to be good or bad might be influenced by what's true, though it's a separate category altogether than things that are true and the innumerable sentences unuttered that are true and just no one's thought of them yet, and preferences in how I would live my life. So that's that'd be my answer to your question, hopefully. Did that make sense, Reid? Yeah, so to me, it's like there's a true for and true. So like true for would be all things manner of preference. It's true for you that one movie is better than another movie. That would be manner of taste, and is not the same as things that are true for us both, regardless of what either of us think.
That's interesting.
And so in that sense, I actually do believe in an objective truth, but it's an abstract idea in any case. It's like this, it's an abstract concept of the opposite of misleading. Given that we understand each other and understand the same meanings for words and understand the same interpretation. Like right outside my room right now, it's either raining or not raining. Maybe it's drizzling, right? Though these are different ways to describe phenomenon of what's going on. And if you have a different interpretation of rain than I do, then we have to make sure we understand what we mean when we say drizzling.
That's fair.
What was the original question? Just, I want to make sure I get it.
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, it was why is it that there's the standard for truth or truth? Why is it that you live your life goodness or actually, yeah, I'm not going to even attempt it. I'm going to let you say it again.
You drew a distinction between I thought you drew a more substantial distinction than just kind of like a subjective preference-based definition of truth and kind of the more objective version of truth. Because I too know what you're talking about. Like I might say something like that woman is an objective 10 out of 10. This woman is my 10 out of 10. And and in some level I understand that for me, this woman's the hottest, but this other woman is in fact the hottest, in the universal objective thing, right? Like, and I know this distinction, but I thought you were making a distinction more where there's a greater divorce between, like, let's say, an intellectual realm of evaluating things and like a lived realm of like I thought you were implying some divorce between your pontification realm and your lived realm.
I see.
Did I pick up on that correctly or not? And that's what I wanted to ask Reid about. If you were to creating a divide there, to what extent Reid has a similar divide, where there's like a realm of pontification that you can enter in with that is somehow divorced from your realm of lived experience. Because I think Andrew has a version of this distinction himself.
I think for me personally, I would say that one of the reasons that I don't believe in that separate objective truth is that I only believe in those subjective truth claims, like my favorite movie is this, but this is part of my lack of belief in objective truth, but belief in subjective truth is why I'm not a 100% scientific materialist, but I also don't believe any religious claims because I think those are subjective and I don't know whether they're true or not. And also, for my own personal belief, I value evidence for things more than things that have more evidence for them, more than things that have less evidence for them, which is why I put less merit in religious claims.
So, Andrew, I got a quick question for you then. Is there a true number of Tic Tacs in here?
I don't know. If you put a gun to my head and I had to say yes or no, I would say yes. But
okay,
I don't think that I know that objectively.
I think this is the distinction you're trying to make. Like, I know how to ride a bike, and I also know that bicycles exist. It's the knowledge how is not propositional knowledge, it's experiential knowledge. I think that's what you're getting at. It's just something that you can enact, and it's evident that you know it. through the action, and liberal science deals with propositional knowledge that the stuff that is public, knowledge how is necessarily individual and subjective or just internal.
Right.
So I think there's just a way to distinguish these different knowledges. And I'm more concerned with knowledge that, propositional knowledge. I think that's like the general term we use, knowledge in general. But sometimes we say knowledge when we think in as knowledge how. We can just distinguish these different types of knowledge whenever we're making a claim. And that's fine. It's fine to do.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it sounds like Shane and Justin value the opposite type of knowledge more. I mean, for me personally, I guess I'm like the most agnostic person about this because I don't really prioritize one over the other.
Well, they all unify in God. That's what I would like. There's this. I don't know. You guys probably haven't heard of Vervaeke. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
John Vervaeke, yeah.
Yeah. So Vervaeke has his, like, I just posted over here. He has his 4 types of knowledge. He gets his procedural knowing,
Perspectival.
Perspectival. That's the one. Propositional knowing and participatory knowing. And like, no worries. I think they all point towards a truth. Like, I think in the sense that I'm a very firm believer in objective knowledge. Like, when I was a hardcore atheist, I still believed in objective knowledge. Like, that's something that I feel deep inside me, and I feel like.
What do you mean by objective knowledge?
Well, I feel like there's a reality that exists outside myself.
Okay.
Like,
so, like, that there is a number of Tic Tacs in here before someone knows it,
which you can't prove. Like, you can't prove that. That to me, that's a bedrock faith claim. It's impossible to prove there's a world outside yourself.
In your opinion, when we
pardon?
Is that objective?
Reality is the thing we test propositions against. It's the thing we start with.
Yeah, but we all only have one subjective portal to reality. So you can't all data sets you encounter are you get through your subjective realm. So it's by definition it's a faith claim that there's objective truth outside yourself. Because you can't test that hypothesis.
Aren't you saying, if you believe in objective truth, then aren't you saying that your claim that that objective truth exists is itself a faith claim?
Yeah, I don't see any way out of that being a faith claim by any standard of truth.
Then I want to go back to Nathan's original question is then, like, how do you define objective knowledge?
No, I'm just trying to say that if there is objective knowledge, like, coming back full circle what we're talking about, you can't test that claim. It's impossible.
Okay, so why do you believe in it then?
Well, it's a faith claim. Like, you might more interesting. Like, I'm the one who believes in faith claims. Important. It might be more interesting to ask Nathan why he believes in objective truth. But all I was trying to get at with that distinction question, and why I pointed out Vervaeke's claim, is I think when multiple different senses align onto one truth, that's a better test, right? Like, when your sense of touch and sight align, you're more likely to think that thing's really there, and then if it speaks, then it's even more there, and so forth, right? So
does that mean that there's a right way, or like there are right reasons and wrong reasons to believe in God then? Because can't there be people who believe in God who don't experience it through any of those types of knowledge?
Prager's one of those people who believes God only with his head he claims, not his heart at all. which is interesting.
So is that a wrong way to believe in God?
Oh, that's too judgy. I'm not gonna step in there. That's too judgy.
Okay.
Leave a man its criteria. But I would put forward it would be better to believe with God with the heart than the head. That would be where my bias would lay.
Okay. So like these like Christian apologists, for example, like William Lane Craig, like trying to like proves God existence and stuff like that. I know you and I've talked before about how you think there's like no point in doing that, right? Something like that.
I personally do not think it's as a rewarding way to approach reality. If you're coming back to Justin's bear people by their fruits, I think you will find that if you can align your approach to reality, that it rests well in your heart, you're probably going to go further and get more out of life than you will if it just aligns with your head. Because head knowledge is a lot more flexible, right? You can come in and you can knock out a proposition, some new piece of data, and all of a sudden your entire worldview can be upended. This is the danger of resting your knowledge on propositional claims.
So knowledge from the heart is more certain?
Well, it comes from a deeper place inside you. It's not there isn't a data set that can come along and wipe out your worldview, right?
Yeah, there is.
Not to the same extent. Like, for instance, like what if you found out that like that all this rationalization, very cerebral type of knowing, actually was enabling in a conspiratorial way people to distract you from more important things because they have more computational resources at their disposal. They're manipulating your reality, your means of expressing your democracy, your means of expressing yourself economically. They have more computational power at their disposal. They're always going to be one step ahead of you predictively. And they're actually trapping you in this game of thinking the way to get ahead is through calculating knowledge. Like conceivably, we could run into that problem with another life form, where if we decided what was most important was to be out-predictive, they can always out-predict us. And if we rest our salvation on our ability to be the most predictive, understandable person, if that's where our salvation comes from, or the thing we desire comes from, then they're going to outgun us in that regard.
Okay. Well,
what
if
do you
that were
mean by salvation?
good question.
What was the question? You said good question.
What do you mean by salvation? I have an idea. I just want to make sure.
Well, the end state you think is desirable.
Okay. I mean, for me, in this hypothetical scenario, if that were to happen, then I would say that obviously I'm wrong.
I can be wrong, but God still loves me. This is the sweet cheating effect of Christianity. Yeah.
Does that mean that you could be proven wrong that God exists but still believe in God?
Well, you can't. I've felt that in my heart. You can't take that away. Like that's a data point that's just true. It's in me. It can't be. There's no data that, you know what I mean? Like I can't unfeel what I felt.
And this type of knowledge is superior to you than like the cerebral or like liberal scientific form of knowledge, right?
I'd say to a certain extent, I think it's more resilient. I would put forward.
More resilient. Interesting. My question instead of that one would have been, is it possible for somebody to feel it and know it in their heart and be mistaken?
That's an interesting question.
About anything, not just the God question, but about anything. Can anyone
Yes, the answer
feel
is
something or
yes.
know something?
And that's why that's why Christianity puts a big emphasis on existing in a community. And that's also why Reid was drawn towards in the liberal science thing, a community. Because and Andrew and I had this discussion too about the echo chamber of one. Can't remember what exact language we were using at the time, but I'd be very leery of existing inside your own perspective alone, which is why earlier I said, is an idea better propositionally evaluated by 5 folk, or as it's existed, enacted by a civilization over a long period of time?
So
I'm curious about the flat Earth community. Like, is the flat Earth community onto something if they believe it as a group?
that's a good question.
And I mean no disrespect to any particular belief. I'm just thinking abstractly about.
You guys aren't round
them.
earthers, are you? Have I been having this conversation with round earthers the whole time?
Round earthers.
It's an oblong spheroid.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as I'm not talking around earthers, because that's a bridge too far.
Now I'm not sure what question we're talking about.
Yeah. What was
The number of people believing in a thing as a collective. Though I must say I probably should be going sometime soon, but I gotta say this has been a really fun discussion, and I love how, like, it's weird that I haven't met YouTube down there before today, but we all managed to like have a 2.5 hour discussion without anyone ever talking over anyone else, and there was like no real moderator necessarily. I mean, other than Andrew, but you don't really count. And like, it was great. I feel like we should maybe what we could do is someday down the road talk about the God question instead of soul. It was funny because this started off as to be continued. Yeah, this started off as, do fetuses have souls and do they go to heaven? Do aborted fetuses go to heaven? Yeah, and we regressed all of the fundamental beliefs you would need to have in order to think that would be yes, and it regressed all the way down to bedrock, which is what is truth, which is actually one of my favorite discussions to be having. Maybe if we were to have another discussion, what we should do is start laying like we should do some homework and think of like the best, most concise definition for what we think is truth, and what it would take for us to change our definition of truth, how willing we are to accept or take on new definitions, and then have a discussion about the God question, since a lot of these beliefs about souls and things like that rest upon the God question. And I think that would be a lot of fun. And it was really great talking to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, I totally agree. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, I know how I know how to do my homework on that in about 5 minutes. I got a good safe plan there. No, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this conversation with me, guys. I appreciate it.
Indeed. Right. Check out my channel, Abstract Activist, on YouTube. I talk to all sorts of people about all sorts of things. Yeah. Oh, and Twitter at abstract_SE.
Check out my Savior Jesus Christ. That's this Bible thing going on. Some churches too. Try plugging in.
Read the Bible, got the Bible, Abstract Activist, and my YouTube channel, Cord to Curiosity. That's me. Yep.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks,
a lot of fun, guys. Nice
Yeah.
to meet you, Reid and Nathan.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Did you?
Hopefully we can talk
See you
again
guys.
soon. Yeah, this will be fun. All right. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll just say my end spiel here that I always say. Always remember this: the funk cures all, and I love you all, and groove is in the heart. These are my most important faith claims, and have interesting conversations with people. And yeah, check out my Patreon, and check out all these other guys too, Cordial Curiosity, Abstract Activist, and entertain some religious views if you haven't already as well. And yeah, thanks everyone again. And yeah, unless anyone else has anything else to say, we can end it there.
Thanks, Andrew. Till next time.
All right.
See ya.
Until next time, everyone.